Hey everybody, today we're going to be going over and discussing some of the incident reports that were released on the Alex Cox situation, the day that he passed. What we're going to be focusing on are some of the actions, some of the words that Zulema Pastenes had to say to some of the investigators. We're also going to be talking about some of the aspects that we learned through her children, Joseph and Kara. So just to recap very quickly who these people are, Alex Cox, the late Alex Cox, he is the brother of Lori Vallow. Zulema Pastenes is the wife of late Alex Cox. Now, again, they were married very briefly, and we'll talk about that momentarily. Now, the incident that we're going to be discussing took place on December 12th, 2019, and this is when Alex passed. So what I want to focus on is a conversation that took place between one of the officers and Zulema at the hospital. Now, this is taking place literally. They're going there. She is in the hospital room with Alex. He is, he's passed. They are taking her out of there to ask her some questions. So this is all boom, boom, boom. In the incident report, he writes that one of the first things that comes out of her mouth is, "Am I a suspect in what happened to Alex?" Now, as far as I'm concerned right there, I'm like, it's a wrap, done. Just go on and send her off. That obviously is very suspicious, and we're going to talk more about all these little things like this that popped up here in a minute. Well, let's just continue going through the events right now. Now, the officer tells her, you know what, you're not a suspect, but we need to figure out what happened here. Now, she recaps basically what had been going on. Of course, this is her version of it. She claims that she had known Alex for about a year, and that they had only been married for like 2 weeks. They kind of eloped in Las Vegas. Now, they were living in a house that she rented there in Arizona, and she had rented that house and lived in it for about 2 years. Now, the health issues that seemingly took his life, they began in and around December 6th. So December 7th, he drives to Mexico to get prescription drugs for them. Now, I don't know what type of drugs they are. From what I know, a lot of people will do this that have the option to be able to go there that live, close enough to it, simply because they're way cheaper. It's not like it is here in America. So this is something that is, I'm going to say fairly normalized. Now, she recounts how they got home. There's grandkids there. He's playing. He becomes easily winded. And this situation just keeps deteriorating. His health isn't doing good. She's urging him to go to a doctor. He won't do it. And he's like, doctors don't know what they're talking about. And it's kind of like, well, how'd that end up working out for you? So she brings the officer to the day of the event. She's like, I got up. I was getting ready for work. She's checking on Alex. And he's like, look, I'm feeling a little bit better. Now, later in the day, he's going to have a phone conversation with Chad. Chad is going to give him a priesthood blessing over the phone. And after that, he's going to contact Zulema. And Chad's going to contact Zulema and be like, look, you need to go home. Something's not right with Alex. He's not feeling well. Go check on him. So Zulema calls Alex. He's having a hard time breathing. She is concerned. So she calls her son, Joseph, who has been, living with them for about the past year, her stepson. So she gets him on the phone and she's like, go check on Alex. Now, when he does, Alex is, he's on the floor. He's not well. It's not looking good. So he calls 911. Now, if you remember the 911 phone call, and I'm going to put links to these things down in the description if you want to go listen to them in full. I mean, he sounds like he's talking about doing laundry on 911. He doesn't really care that this guy is just, convulsing in front of him. And I shouldn't say it's not that he doesn't care. I don't know. But there is no emotion at all. I would think there would be some kind of panic, some kind of something. But there is just nothing. So Zulema gets home. She does chest compressions, until the paramedics get there. They get him to the hospital, but it is too late, and Alex passes. Later on, an autopsy would show that he had high blood pressure, as well as blood clots that were wedged into the arteries of his lungs. So that's the general synopsis of, the picture she's painting as to what went down when all this happened. Now, the officer writes in his report, some other little details that he learns from his questioning of Zulema. So in this, she says, you know what, I didn't know he had any medical issues. I don't know his family's history. He doesn't use drugs or alcohol. So to me, that's interesting because I'm like, well, what prescription drugs was he going to get then? Specifically, I know he was getting some for her and him. So it makes me wonder, well, what was he picking up for him? Is that legit? Now, in this, he also writes, Alex was a truck driver and he was taking a break from work. He had some money saved up. Now, he arrived in Arizona the day before Thanksgiving, and Zulema will say, you know what, I convinced him to stay here and not go back to Idaho and get rid of the apartment or whatever. Now, in this report, Zulema also talks about Melanie and Ian Pulowski visiting for them for Thanksgiving, And she talks about, Alex had 6 siblings, but, he didn't really have too much communication with them. Now, when it comes to Lori and her connection, this is where it gets very interesting. Zulema says, you know what, I know Lori and Melanie. I've only met Lori a few times. When he asked her for Lori's phone number, she was like, you know what, I don't have it. The last time I tried texting her, the phone was disconnected. She also says she doesn't know where Lori lives. She also says, you know what, we haven't talked since Lori moved away, and she claims that she also didn't know that Lori was married. So now, during this conversation, this, questioning that's going on at the hospital, at some point, Zulema's son-in-law arrives. Now, the son-in-law will bring an end to things, and he will tell the cops, the officers, he'll say, look, you need to talk to our attorneys, but this questioning is done with. And so that's where this ends. So now let's take a quick sofa sidebar before we get into some of the good dirt. So let's just look at the gravity of this. Your husband has just passed away, allegedly very unexpectedly, and this is bizarre. So you start off leaving the room and saying, am I a suspect in this? I mean, that's not a cute look for anybody. It ends with your son-in-law saying you need to talk to her attorney. This has red flags all over it. So for me, here's some things going on. Take out the option of, oh, did someone do something to Alex? Just even take that off the table. Just take it off the table. Let's just look at the fact of, what if she knows enough information to know all the dirt going on with these people to where she is like, ooh, they're going to think that I had something to do with this. That's not even going down the rabbit hole of, do we think that Alex really, passed over natural causes and whatnot. So let's talk about what her kids were saying about this, because when I read that, I was like, oh, whoa, okay, I can't wait to hear this in court. So now back at the house, back at Zulema's house. So remember, Joseph is living with her at one point. So he calls his sister, her name's Kara, and the police, they talk to her, they talk to him, and this is in this report here. Again, it's down in the description if you want to read the whole thing. So let's talk about some of the stuff that came out with that. Now, let's start with Kara first. Y'all, right off the bat, the tea that Kara served in just a few sentences was so piping hot, I thought about filing a damn needless lawsuit talking about, you need to put some warning labels on this stuff, because it was good. So Kara will say that she used to live there with Zulema before Alex moved in, and once he moved in, she was like, Kara says that her mother has had numerous situations like this with men, where she'll let them move in, and Kara was like, you know what, I didn't want to go through another male living in the house. This speaks volumes. We'll dig more into that in a second. Now, both Kara and her brother Joseph will say, we didn't really even know Alex. Like, we talked a little bit in passing. That's kind of it, which is very odd. Part of me can see that in the way of, who's the flavor of the week? We don't even want to acknowledge him, that type thing. But as we're going to find out here in a minute, there's some things going on that I'm like, how would you not know this even living in your own house? So let's continue. Now, Kara does confirm, yeah, you know what? Alex moved in around Thanksgiving. She knew that they were engaged. Another big thing here is that no one knew they got married. I mean, this is like a theme here with everyone. But when it gets down to like your own kids and stuff, it's so weird. I'm just like, why? That doesn't really equate with me, but nothing with this case does. Now then, this is where it gets good. This is where the lawsuit for the hot spill tea comes. So then Zulema says about her mother and Lori Vallow. She's like, yeah, they knew each other and they were really good friends. They were attending the same church and they were preppers. And she goes on to explain that preppers are preparing for the end of the world. So let's pause right here. The sofa sidebar right here. So let's talk about some of the things that we see in this statement. So first off, the obvious, they're way closer than Zulema is saying. Notice how we saw the same reaction with everything. Remember, the all popped off and the police are going to Rexburg and all that, and they talk to Chad and Alex at Lori's place and they act like they don't know her. This is a theme with all this. Who? Lori who? Oh, her. I don't know her. So then also the prepping thing, for her daughter to be like, oh yeah, they're preppers, that's not just like oh, mom liked to do some canning once a blue moon. This is like, no, they're preppers. Also the end of the world stuff, yada, yada, yada. Combine this with the fact that the kid seems so ambivalent, just so neutral to the guy in her life for the moment. You know, I just feel like there was maybe a level of like, what is mom doing now, kind of a thing. It'll be interesting to see if we can get some more information regarding that from that side, because I bet they have a lot of tea. Now, Kara goes on to say that, yeah, you know what? Mom met Alex because of her relationship with Lori. And she says that Zulema was going to go to Idaho to be with Alex, you know, but he ended up coming to Arizona. So again, this whole thing of like, oh, I didn't know Lori was married. Oh, I didn't know this was going on. Wait, what's her last name again? I'm just like, yeah, I'm not buying this. So let's talk about their conversation with Joseph real quick. So he says, you know what? I was at home when I received a phone call to go check on Alex, and this is something that she never did. And so she calls back again, and it's like way more serious, like, you know, go, you know, call the cops. You know, something's not right. So again, pause real quick. So when he's acting like he had no idea, like, why would you want me to go check on Alex? What's going on? Well, if you look at what they're saying of, oh, well, you know, he started having breathing problems on the 6th, and it just kept getting worse, and he was winded, and da-da-da-da-da. Here's my thing. Now, granted, this guy's like, I think 25 years old. So, I mean, we're not talking about some completely, you know, affected, like, you know, 15-year-old, you know, but regardless, I mean, it's not his business to keep up with what they're doing and all that. I would think, and I'm just looking at past experiences, stuff like that, even current phone conversations I might have with my mother on the phone about my own stepfather. If there's some kind of health thing going on, you're usually aware of it, especially if you're living under the same roof. So for him to kind of act like, oh, something, what? That just struck me as really weird, because I'm like, don't you know that something's going on with his breathing, with whatever? There's just this, seems to be this complete disconnect, but also a complete lack of communication. And I just wonder if that's intentional. You know, and again, both of them, and I'm speaking of Kara and Joseph here, there was just this, this very, you know, benign energy to the whole situation. So I found that just to be very interesting. I thought the whole thing was very interesting to read through. These are the main parts that just stuck out to me. Again, it's a huge document. It's down below. There's also some other sources in there that you can look at and do some further reading on. So that's it. I'm very curious to hear what y'all have to say about this. I want to know if this has got, you know, your wheels turning or whatever. I know a lot of this stuff is like, okay, who do you believe? And this one said this and that one said this. You know, Zulema just got that use immunity. So that's, you know, very interesting to see, well, what's that for? What's that going to play out like? So anyway, that's it. I hope y'all are doing well. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all the mods, the subscribers, the Patreons, the channel members. I appreciate it. I wouldn't be here without you. All the links are down in the description below. If you want to see more of my commentary on cases like this or this case, just click the stuff that's popping up over here. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon.